Something that really attracted people to the club was Ashley Westwood. So I was wondering, from your perspective, what was it like to work with him, and what did he introduce to the game that you hadn't seen before?
Enough, Ashley wasn't the first choice for the club. There was another coach who was signed and supposed to be joining.
Okay.
And the initial recruitment, I did a lot of calls with him, and that fell through in the last minute because he chose to stay on at Cambridge United. And then Ashley came in when a lot of the recruitment to an extent had been done. And Ash then brought in the likes of John Johnson, Curtis Asano, and together we both through different sources knew about Sean Rooney, and Sean Rooney joined the club. I think in the first year, Ash was brilliant, brought in a lot of professionalism that was evident in clubs in the UK, and he put those best practices in it, Bengaluru. And the fact that the management bought into a lot of that, like it's...
Could you elaborate on what those practices are?
Simple things like the players typically in those days in an Indian club, you'd show up at the ground, put your bags on the side of the ground, train, and go home. Whereas I had the privilege at DSK where we were on site, so the players would all have breakfast together, then we'd go to the field, and then we could all go to the gym. We had that at DSK. So we brought that in at BFC. So we had that building. Players would come in the morning. We made sure that there was an area for them to eat, a dining area, a kitchen, everything. So the players would have food, would get their tapings and anything done with the physios. We'd have testing, hydration tests, etc. So all these kind of sports science side of it. Go out, train. As soon as you finish training, lunch. So there's a clubhouse environment, which, some of the Kolkata clubs have this, which existed to an extent, but it wasn't done in a professional manner where the food, you're actually looking after nutrition, what kind of breakfast you're providing, what kind of lunch you're providing, the little windows of opportunity to rehydrate players and nourish them immediately after training. The fact that heart rate monitors, we were measuring things like this. A lot of sports science data we were collecting pre-match and pre-training, post-training, during training as well. We actually had live feed of heart rates and etc. when we were training, so we could adjust training accordingly in pre-season and to see which players are getting better fitness-wise, which players are still struggling, etc. So there was a lot of that aspect that was new to Indian football, which hadn't been done ever. I mean, I think without doubt the first club to be using heart rate monitors, using then later the second season when we brought in the Stat Sports, the GPS, all those kind of things. Again, nutrition, supplements, gym sessions. That was a big part of pre-season as well, where we not only built a sort of gym area inside the clubhouse, we also used one that was nearby, so you could do double sessions within a day, but within a sort of club environment, as opposed to having to break it up completely.
Yes. Okay, so you brought up Menyonka earlier. He was one of my favorite players from that first season. Like I felt that he was the heart of the entire team. Like every attack forward, he would be the one starting it. In the defense, he would be coming back and everything. So I wanted to ask what kind of impact did he have on the entire squad and behind the scenes as well?
Because I'd obviously worked with Johnny at Lajong. I'd signed him at Shillong Lajong after having coached against him. He was with United Sikkim in the second division, and we played them a very good game against us. And so we stayed in touch, and I signed him at Lajong. And then after I left, he moved to Dempo, and he was available. And initially, Ashley didn't want him because he said, I don't play with a number 10. I want my triangle the other way around. I need a deep lying playmaker as opposed to triangle the other way. But I think after the first, so he wasn't impressed with the way Johnny played in terms of the videos he had seen for Dempo. But then the first training session, you instantly realize that this guy's a good player. My first thing was like, okay, this guy's a player. He knows how to handle himself. He knows how to handle the ball. Because your first impression, you look at a player that's not that big. You don't expect anything. But when you see him with the ball, it just changes your perception. So had to try and convince him now to play in a role that Johnny was unfamiliar with, having to play as a sort of you could use the term defensive midfielder, but it was a deep line playmaker. And I think the first game that we played was against the Indian national team, where Wim Koolmans had his camp. So we were missing supposedly our two best Indian players at the time, which was Sunil and Robin. And everyone was nervous. We're going to play the India team without Sunil and Robin. We're going to get beaten 5 or 6-0. I think even Sunil was going around telling his...
This was the game that happened behind closed doors in Bangalore, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I remember this, yeah.
It wasn't really closed doors. People came in. But I think Sunil was... Because people in the India camp were asking Sunil, what's your team like, this, that, and the other. And they were sharing the same facilities. So they'd see us training and they'd say, oh, you guys do a lot of running, you do a lot of fitness, you don't seem to do much, with a ball, which is different to the way the Dutch coaches, Wim at the time was doing a lot of this stuff. But so even Sunil didn't think the team was good. He told some of the guys, we'll probably win 4-5-0 against them. So we got wind of that. So which pumped up a lot of the other boys were thinking, we'll show them. Yeah. Because honestly, in those days, and I still to this day believe, there's not that much of a difference between the guys who get selected for the national team and the ones who aren't. Let's just say, if you put an India B team together and an India A team, probably not too much of a difference. Yeah. And obviously we had Johnny Manyonga, John Johnson, Curtis Asano, and Sean Rooney had just arrived on our team. So the first half, we absolutely battered them. I think Sunil couldn't get in behind because of Curtis's pace. Robin couldn't win a header because of Jono. And Siamangal won the penalty when Jingan brought him down, and I think Johnny scored it. So that changed everyone's perception all of a sudden. With people watching like Mandar and everyone else thought, hang on a second, we look half decent. And this is without Robin and Sunil. We look decent. And we're playing against the best Indian players. And in the second half, I think Wim made about 9 changes to the squad. Brought fresh legs on, and Lenny smashed one in the top corner. And it was 1-1. But just coming out of that game, everyone all of a sudden, mind changed. Like Ashley suddenly thought, hang on, our players aren't, if that's the best Indian players, and there's not that much difference in our players compared to them. And the management suddenly felt, wow, we've got a chance this season. We're not going to be finishing bottom. This is a brand new club. No one had any expectation. And I think for those fans who managed to sneak into the stadium, and obviously the word got out, even though it's supposed to be behind closed doors. So I think that created a little bit of a buzz already that you drew against the Indian national team. This team, there's something about this team. And I think that confidence, and that's also possibly one of the reasons why Sunil didn't start in the first game for BFC. Because because they were away at India camp, we had worked on the same group of players working together. Everyone knew how to play with one another. So we didn't want to break that in the first game going into the season.
Okay. That's nice. I remember being at that first game itself, and regardless of the impact of the preseason, Steve Chetri getting subbed on, I think, boosted the morale for everybody at the stadium as well, like watching the game, added to the atmosphere. So we won the league also in that first season, which was amazing. Nobody had expected that initially, and it was the first time I got to attend an open top bus parade back there, which is amazing. Yeah. So